each time I've done it, I've had a room that looks right down on it. And so I've been able to watch kind of every different thing they do with the use of the exterior, which is remarkable on its own. Just what they do on the outside of that thing is crazy. I was actually on the golf course at the Wynn one time, getting ready to take a shot, and it was an ad for Google. And then all of a sudden it turned into a giant eyeball that was just looking at me. And it was a little bit, and I was like, okay, that was a little distracting.
Did that eyeball mess up your backswing?
I did. I had to stop and try to shoot again.
Doc, there's a 12-foot man in our pool pointing a beam at my head. Do something.
Do not speak to me! Ignore my presence and go about your earthly business!
On this episode of AVWeek, we talk about the Sphere, Sennheiser's expanded production capabilities, and Panasonic's not selling projectors anymore. All that and more coming up on AVWeek. This is episode 667, The Temple of Art. This is AVWeek, your weekly wrap-up of all the news in the audiovisual world. I'm your host, Brian Heidgerken, filling in for Tim. He's taking a little break before all the action at InfoComm 2024. But don't worry, we've got a great group of guests with us. Joining us is, first and foremost, Willie Franklin, Event Technology Coordinator, President at Franklin DJ Services. Hello, Willie.
Hey, good afternoon, Brian. Great to be back with you today.
Always enjoy talking with you. Also joining us is Eric Smith, CTO and founder at Oliver IQ. Hello, Eric.
Hey, it's kind of fun to be here. It's good to see you.
Glad to have you. And last but not least, we have Rob Raspberry, Director of Classroom and Collaboration Services at Drexel University. Hello, Rob.
Brian, thanks. It's the first time on here, so I'm excited for some good conversation.
We're always looking for good conversation, right? So we had some homework, we did some reading, and the first topic we've got this week, which I think is, we'll have to do some math and see if this is the first topic on most podcasts, but the Sphere in Las Vegas. InfoComm's in Las Vegas. I think everybody's going to swing by and get some pictures in front of it and try and get inside. But specifically, this article that we read from AV Magazine was about the audio and the video coexisting, right? And that's even the title. It coexists in peace. And I think as people in our industry, that's always the goal. That's always the struggle, is making sure the technology works together, not only with audio, video, control, and all of that, but also with the space. My first question, though, to start with is at the beginning of the article, they say the Sphere is not just a temple of the arts. And my question to you guys is it a temple of the arts?
Brian, if I can jump in there, I've yet to see it firsthand and have that experience. But two, and most importantly, I have to agree with that article notion that it is a temple of the arts. I grew up in a time frame where immersive theater included smell-o-vision, vibrating seats. You went to see film, right? Right? Now technology is taking us forward where that immersive environment wraps all around you with high-end video graphics and certainly high-end audio. The whole aspect of beaming audio and creating a space around the AV, I think is unique. And maybe I'm overselling it or even underselling it, but it is certainly an aspect of art just to behold visually from its exterior, to step inside of that space, which I'm really eager to get there, and have that total immersion into the AV presence. I'll be able to add more when I experience it firsthand.
Well, and you don't have to put on the red and blue glasses, paper glasses either, right?
Precisely.
I have worked 3 different trade shows where I had a suite in the Palazzo, and the suites are right in the corners. And so each time I've done it, I've had a room that looks right down on it. And so I've been able to watch kind of every different thing they do with the use of the exterior, which is remarkable on its own. Just what they do on the outside of that thing is crazy. I was actually on the golf course at the Wynn one time, getting ready to take a shot, and it was an ad for Google. And then all of a sudden it turned into a giant eyeball that was just looking at me. And it was a little bit, and I was like, okay, that was a little distracting. And I have not been in, but I have 3 different friends have seen U2 in it and sent me videos, and they said it was the most amazing experience of their life. They've not had a more immersive and completely consuming concert experience in their life.
Did that eyeball mess up your backswing?
I did. I had to stop and try to shoot again. It was mulligan time.
Every time I see that one in a video, it's always a little creepy. You're just kind of like,
Okay.
but it's a logical choice, right? You have a sphere, and it's going to be an eyeball and a basketball and a golf ball, and those are the easy ones. Rob, what's your take? Have you been there?
No, so this will be the first time to check out the sphere, but I've seen a lot of articles and a lot of video on it. And I think, saying it's a temple of art, that's fine. You can almost say it's a temple of technology, audio, video technology, because I'm just amazed in being able to create that kind of level of acoustic, excellence in an object that is essentially a sphere behind screens. Just the technology that they had to use to allow the audio in a non, I would say, standard environment to get all these great reviews must be amazing. I cannot wait to check this stuff out, because being able to manipulate audio is just in and of itself really is an art. So I'm looking forward to checking this out.
The sphere is definitely not ideal for an acoustician to go in and develop a plan, right? And that technology is incredible, and then, a little bit more in the price range of most projects. You have, these types of, steerable speakers, you have steerable microphones, the technology that we have today to really give a great experience for regardless of where you're seated in I know one of the struggles that I've dealt with in my career is going into, old, house of worship, old cathedrals, old churches, to where they were built with technology to amplify the sound from a specific point in the space. And then we come in and we're adding, baby grand pianos and worship bands and speakers and microphones. And now we're actually fighting the old world technology with the new world technology. So having this capability is amazing.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And this may be a bad analogy, but I'm going to go with it. I'm old enough, and maybe some of you are too, to remember super balls, little tiny balls. You can throw them against the wall and they bounce all over the place.
Yep.
I mean, if we throw a basketball against the wall, it kind of comes right back at us. So conceptualize that acoustic wave of sound going directly to a person in a seat. But instead, you have this fear, and if you think back to the whole notion of a super ball, that audio wave, instead of coming right back or right to the person in the seat, is bouncing all over the place. And much like you said, Rob, the notion of adjusting the audio, of fine-tuning of massaging that data so that it's a wonderful experience for every seat in that space is utterly amazing. I find it hard to believe that one would not conceptualize that from an artistic standpoint. So, yeah, I think very much it's a temple of art.
And you have to sort of give kudos to just stepping out, on a limb to say we're building this structure and we want to make this, mind-blowing, innovative. And you're coming up with different kinds of technology to apply properly to what your project is. And it's, I'm sort of drooling, hopefully no close-ups. We don't want to see that. But this is very exciting. This will be exciting for me to check out.
I was flying to Hawaii about 4 weeks ago and ended up sitting next to a guy going across, and we ended up talking. He runs a company that their whole job is installing very complex things on buildings. And they're the guys that rope up. He was a mountain guide, and his whole job. And so they did the whole sphere, and mounting the speakers and then hanging the displays in front of those while they're all like on all these pulleys and ropes and hooked up in harnesses, because it goes all the way around you, right? The display goes all across the ceiling. And he talked about how challenging that was, getting everything lined up properly and getting it all in there when you're kind of dangling from ropes and connecting everything. And he's not an AV guy at all, but he was on the team that had to actually get all that stuff in place, hanging from the ceilings.
Wow.
Right. I don't think we have enough AV technicians that are rock climbers and rigging certified. So you kind of have to have a class of, okay, here's the piece, here's how you put it together, and then hand it off to those professionals.
Yeah.
One of the things that really amazed me in the article was the coordination, right? I mean, these speakers are not light. I think they're, about 300 pounds, give or take. And so when they were planning the building, they actually hung dummy speakers made out of concrete so that they could tension the building where the speakers were going to go as they put it all together. And then they went in, after it was more appropriate to put the speakers up, because we've all been in those situations where you're double bagging a speaker or something so it stays clean during construction. Not ideal. But, then they took the weights down and put the speakers up in their place. Mm-hmm. So, that was an amazing level of, okay, we're building this space, right? And we all joked earlier in the pre-show about, will they make money? Can they make money? Is this sustainable? But it's kind of neat to see somebody take the risk and really push the envelope and be like, look, this is what you can do, regardless of profitability, but we're going to go out here and really show you something.
That's just utterly amazing. As you talked about the aspect of essentially hanging concrete boxes so that you can verify the structural integrity of thing, and then putting the actual speakers in place. What I start to think about were instances where astronauts are training underwater, right? So you can kind of simulate zero gravity, and you can work with heavier payloads because buoyancy changes. But all of that combined, if you've ever built a home or constructed anything with a team, it's understanding that workflow, and it's also being open to asking questions that you don't know to ask, and listening for questions that you're not even prepared to conceptually understand to pull it all together. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during the construction phase of that. Eric, as you're talking about construction or AV technologists who are mountain climbers, who are kind of gymnasts, if you will. You're flying, you're handling weight, but you can't get away from the pull of gravity, but yet you're still tasked with doing what you would normally do if you were standing on the ground.
I'm amazed they've built it. I think it's just a remarkable thing. I mean, concerts have been getting bigger and bigger screens as time has been going on, and that's the ultimate, where the screen goes all the way around you.
It's sort of funny because one of my peers here, and he works doing design and spaces in the media arts school. It was interesting. He mentioned the other day that they were using some technology that was used in the Sphere. So sort of as like speaking a talking point. Yeah, we use the same stuff that they use in the Sphere. I was like, oh, really? Wow, so
it's a speak-on
it's
connector.
Like interesting. Yeah, exactly.
It's the bolts that holds the seat in place.
There you go. But it's what they do.
It is incredible. And again, to tie this back into my day-to-day life, the coordination that's needed for that, because I have trouble getting floor boxes put in, before the foundations are poured, and getting, the outlets and utilities needed for a standard flat or even slightly curved video wall. I can't imagine, and would, being in there at the points where you're like, okay, we're going to hang 310-pound, concrete blocks at these locations, and, so that we can make sure that everything's lining up properly once we put it together. I think that's the ultimate goal, right? Is for technology people, is to be in the room. We're always talking about how we're late to the show. We're late to the game. And to be there during those conversations where you're still in concept mode of like, okay, it's a sphere. Great. Now what? How do we, what are the next steps? And making sure that the technology and the space are designed hand in hand, as opposed to, your typical conversations of, well, it's a rectangular room and we have people seated here, and the ceiling's too low, so I can't do a screen big enough for people to see, or or there's a pillar here, and now I need to rotate the room 90 degrees or something like that. It's always, we're adjusting to the space, but this was a true example of the space and the need and the technology being built together.
Wow.
Yep. Synergy. Yeah.
Let's make it the standard. Call us early, call us often. All right. So moving on to topic number 2. Commercial Integrator had an article. Sennheiser Group invests $15 million in their German facility, right? Which at the first reading, it's like big deal. Companies invest in their own facilities regularly. But for me reading this, the big takeaway is that they're bringing more infrastructure in-house. Like, I mean, they literally put holes in the roof of this building so they could drop in additional machines so that they can bring in the ovens for the PCBs that they're making, and they're bringing that more in-house. And I don't know if it's the universe or whatever, but I just got done watching a video about Henry Ford and the Model T, and how he owned every piece of production, every bolt, every tire. The wood came from a factory he owned. The rubber came from, or not a factory, from a forest he owned. The rubber was from a rubber forest that he owned. So he owned every piece and controlled every piece of that car and its manufacturing. And we went to outsourcing, right? And then they complicated outsourcing by throwing in just-in-time delivery. But I think the last 5-10 years has really started to see a shift again. I think with us stretching the global supply chains, you throw COVID in there, you throw things like bridges getting run into by ships, and shutting down ports. Is this a trend, do you think, that we're going to start seeing, where people are going to maybe not come to the level of Henry Ford, because I don't know that that's possible today, but are we going to start bringing in, as manufacturing going to start bringing in more of the key components in-house?
I think that makes sense when you control, what you're creating. But also in this case, and maybe the example of Sennheiser reaches out to other companies. Sennheiser has expanded its line, of what it offers. Mm-hmm. And it's a good product, and it's a great product. So if you are increasing your efficiency, making your products more available, making that supply chain shorter, you're able to expand upon what you're able to do, expand your business, reach out, do more for your customers. I mean, I didn't know, and you may find this funny, that Sennheiser has a video bar that they, had put out. And I am just like, it's like, wait a minute, Sennheiser? And other companies, say Biam does, control systems, and all these companies are expanding out. So if they make their production facilities more efficient and are able to meet customer needs faster and more efficiently, I think that's just like you said, Brian. I think it may be a trend.
Well, I see two things happening right now. The supply chain disruptions that happened with COVID definitely are making people want to take more control of their situation. And so they'll find key areas. And I bet what Sennheiser has done is found places that they had problems before that they can fix now. Mm-hmm. I'm also bringing my production closer and closer. A couple things, the tariffs in China that Donald Trump put in place, those are definitely painful and making everyone rethink what they do. Places that were not as affordable and were not competitive now can be because of that. There's also just a lot of push to not be dependent on China in lots of ways. We're all kind of worried about what happens there if we're too dependent. And so the closer you can bring it to home, the better it gets. I don't think we're heading back to everyone building everything back in their own factory kind of thing. It's just economically won't happen. But I think there are some trends that direction. And the more people can take control of things themselves, especially where they've had problems, they're going to try to find ways to do that.
Yeah. Eric, Rob, I think I know you hit a couple of key areas there. Just thinking about the supply chain issue and tariffs. I wouldn't say it's a madhouse out there because I'm not entrenched in it, but often it's far more affordable for companies to build it versus buy it. Sennheiser may have leverage if one thinks about the CHIP Act, the notion of having access to those vital resources that were complicated to get when the supply chain kind of hiccuped, if you will. And it's still untangling its intestinal tract, if you will. But for the most part, for me, in reading that article, not only did I see that as a great move for Sennheiser, but I also saw it as an opportunity for them to get a bit more market share. So if I can bring everything in-house and do more, I can offer you, my competitor, the opportunity to do a little bit more by taking on a couple of contractual obligations and building X for you, or at least a portion of your product for you, because I now have the resources to do so, in addition to still being able to put out top-notch quality equipment that has my brand. So I'm not threatened by taking on additional work. I'm enhancing what I'm capable of doing as a corporation. So I think it's a fantastic move. It'll be interesting to see how many companies might shift in that direction, because there's so many pieces of the puzzle to consider, from tariffs to supply chains, shipping vessels that now have to take longer routes to get to their port of destination as a result of pirates and other civil unrest in various countries, let alone chip manufacturing technology that we begin to see ramping up in various areas of the United States. So there's just so much happening out there. And of course, who's to say the impact that AI has on those decisions?
Need a bell. Someone mentioned AI and COVID in the same conversation. Although I will admit, when you said pirates, I was kind of like, pirates? Like, oh yeah, well, pirates. It's 2024 and we still have pirate problems.
Not so. Johnny Depp pirate.
But yeah, and like you guys have all said, I know during COVID, there were some companies that had the ability to go, oh, we can't get this chip or we can't get that part, but we can get this other part and then shift our production line. And they were able to meet demands. Again, they didn't own the whole supply chain, but they owned enough of it that they could shift and still stay, competitive and get product out the door. Yeah. And I think as those lines shorten up, and and there's both political, economic, and other pressures, like Eric said, to kind of like, okay, let's bring this in a little bit closer, and we have a supplier to a supplier. We're not like 5 deep. Maybe we're just 3 deep on our supplier chain. And kind of maybe this is a stretch to link these two, but Panasonic, AV Magazine, says that Panasonic is getting out of the projector business, right? I don't think they're the first to do it. Projectors I think they still have a place. They still have a use case, especially in higher ed and education spaces. But there's a lot of pressure, right? Those 96-inch TVs, those 110-inch TVs are getting priced to where it's like, well, do we do a projector or do we put a TV up? So Panasonic's made the decision to sell off their projector line. And shockingly to me, because obviously I don't know the whole portfolio of Panasonic, but they're going to focus on their supply chain software, which when it's software, you do own the whole potentially the whole supply chain, because you have the developers, right? It's software. You're making updates, you're making refreshes. I didn't know Panasonic was in that, but I mean, does this have a bigger, again, we talked about trends earlier, of our companies getting into more of that software realm to where hardware is a little bit more agnostic? I had a meeting with AMX recently, and I noticed that they're kind of like, hey, whatever touch panel you want to bring, just load this, you program in Python and C# or whatever. They're not like, oh, you have to use our programming language. You have to use our, it's like, hey, load that on any box you want. And then, we'll help you the rest of the way. Is that where we're going?
That seems.
Are we worried about that?
I'm worried about it. I'm worried about it because one, I don't write code, and but I think it's the way the world is going, right? It has long since been the internet of everything, interconnectivity of everything, right? And code to make it all operate, chips to make it possible. At the end of the day, I can honestly say when I saw that headline and began reading it, it's like, what? Because I'm a big Panasonic projection fan.
Right.
while at the same time, I recognize the amount of LED screens that are appearing out there and large format flat panel monitors is growing. In the higher ed environment, that K through 12 environment, projection technology still seems to be king, but I'm also seeing a lot of flat panels that I know I've integrated from the consulting standpoint, and people are moving that direction. And also from a corporate partnership standpoint, I see a lot of very expensive LED panels going in that may be out of the reach of most companies to spend money on. But if you partner with another corporate entity, one example would be the high school sports and the college sports environment. If a soft drink company, which in our case came to our school and say, hey, we'll do XYZ for you and put in the best of technology, but you'll only sell our products. How can you say no to that? Because it so impacts the bottom line. People are going to buy soft drinks at your concession stands, but now you don't have to spend a ton of money from your budget to implement the latest and greatest in technology, which is then a big sell to your school's benefactors and donors and other community partners that come
guests.
on board. Yeah, absolutely. But still, as far as Panasonic's shift to more software, I don't understand it. I thought they were happy. I thought it was a beautiful marriage. You saw their gear, you bought their gear, you hung their gear, and the world was happy. What broke? What broke?
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to fund an acquisition of a company they want to buy that's in that kind of space. So they probably found some software they're enamored with. And I think it's an interesting thing, the business decision to tie the reason for selling one division into what you're going to do with the money, though. That seems to me, that seemed a little strange. I've owned and bought and sold companies and done that. And I've never usually said the reason I'm selling off my projector division is because I want to buy this other thing. I just say, look, we've decided we don't want to be in that business anymore. It's kind of an interesting article in that aspect to me.
Maybe it was it was cover, or it was they were going to do the acquisition anyway, but they wanted to get rid of projectors. So they're like, oh, two birds, one stone, we can kind of soften the blow. Or they have an agreement with all the other projector manufacturers not to go, oh, projection's dead. We're leaving early, so.
Yeah, I'm not really sure to quite get a grip on exactly what's happening here, because I think you go one way or the other. Either you're selling off, a big part or a large part of the company to acquire this whatever they're coming up with. It's just very curious to see exactly what is this software going to do. And yeah, we do live in a more agnostic world. It used to be you either were AMX or your Extron or your Crestron, that's your system. And then all of a sudden, you can take an Extron controller and tie it to a different, touch panel, and you can mix and match and customize and that kind of thing. It is a bit of a shame that, Panasonic's getting out of that, projector side. They do have a good product, but, I get it.
Mm-hmm. I'll have to tell you, this is a long time ago story, but you bringing that up made me think about it. I was an integrator using AMX in the early 90s. And I had come up where I'd taken their direct API and I'd built my own color touchscreens, even before AMX had color touchscreens, and put them in people's homes. I wrote my own software that then talked to the AMX control system to be the front end. And so it's funny that they're now there. And that company was a company I started called Synergy. And actually, eventually, AMX bought that from me and turned it into their classroom system. And so they had a media retrieval system called Synergy back in the 90s. And that was my company. But what we started with is we built our own touchscreen software that would tie into an AMX because we didn't like their stuff and their yellow screen, LED single color.
Monochromatic.
Yeah, exactly. And so they bought that from me in 95, and I moved to Dallas when they were like 45 employees at AMX.
And you can't say AMX without talking about their Panja days, but
yeah,
that was an odd step. Yeah, it will stay tuned. We're going to see more of this, right? As we see consolidation in AV. I think there was a big announcement about AVISPL is buying somebody down in Latin and South America, and then there's acquisitions constantly going on. in the industry, and that's just going to speed up, I think, as the technology gets more complicated, more software driven. It kind of forces people to reassess and get to be a size just to be sustainable, right? Whether you're on the manufacturing side or on the integration side. So, wrap things up. Any last thoughts? We're going into InfoComm 2024. Your guys' feelings, excited? Is this one of those soft years, or there's some cool stuff coming out?
I am going in with a complete open mind on this. I mean, we are looking to get our systems more with the AV over IP infrastructure and looking at some digital signage, different things. So I'm excited to see that. But, it's always when you go to InfoComm, there's always like one or two technologies that, even though a lot of people have heard of, you haven't, and you discover it. So I'm excited about, this year and coming out. And, sorry to say it, excited to see the Sphere. So I'm just saying.
Oliver IQ is a residential product, and we're focused on smart home for the broad market. But I'm also on the board and the founder of Savvy Controls, and I'm going to be down there with them in their booth a couple of the days and showing some new stuff. And I'm excited about that, and just to be there with that team that has grown dramatically over the years, doing some really interesting stuff. And I'm just excited to see everything everybody else has too.
I'm going to have to live vicariously through the two of your experiences. I have other travel plans that were already on the calendar when InfoComm came out, so I will not be there. But I look forward to hearing the delightful energy that you'll be bringing forward in our next conversation about your experiences in the Sphere, outside the Sphere, looking at the giant eyeball, looking at you, and just that whole Vegas experience.
Well, it'll be something if you hear stories of me being on top of the Sphere. That would be.
See, now that's the tour that I want, right? It's maybe I'm too close to the industry, but like I was at a Tina Turner concert years ago, and I spent more time looking behind the stage. Show was incredible, but seeing what was going on, with when she comes off stage, I didn't realize that there's a very large man that basically picks her up and carries her off stage in a towel. Because they don't want her to trip down the stairs, and then he carries her back up on stage and sets her back down and takes the towel off of her, the big blanket. And, those are the inner workings of the Sphere. Yeah. Let me go see that rack room and climb behind the, that would be a lot of fun.
Brian, you won my heart, because I kid you not, when I love birding, which means I always have binoculars in the car, but when I go to concerts, I also take my binoculars because I'm a technology geek, right? I want to see the hardware as well as experience the show.
Yep. It's part of the show.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for joining me this week, making it very easy to fill in Tim's shoes. If people want to get a hold of you or reach out and follow you outside of your appearances on AVWeek, Rob, what's the best way for people to follow you?
Best way, Robert Raspberry on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's where I'm at.
Awesome. Eric, what's the best way for people to follow and keep track of your travels?
Yeah, Eric Smith at LinkedIn's not very great. That's a pretty common name, but E. Smith at Oliver IQ works pretty well.
I noticed that.
OliverIQ.com. There's a lot of Eric Smiths in this world. It's kind of hard.
And Willie, how about you?
Email, you can reach me at franklandjservices@gmail.com. And of course on LinkedIn, Willie Franklin. You can find me there.
Well, thanks again for being here today. And thank you guys for joining us. And don't forget to check out avnation.tv or any place you find your favorite podcast for more AV Week or other AVNation podcasts. I'm particular to one called AV Tech. We talk about relationships between technology architects and interior design. Check it out. I hear the host is okay. Otherwise, stay tuned to AV Week and AVNation for all of your InfoComm 2024 coverage. They have the pre-show, they have the show, the post-show, and they have reports from the floor, which I guess would be called the show. Until next time, or until I see you out at InfoComm, have a great week, and thank you.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.